All right, Elf Noobs Nation, my name is Reed Nelson. I'm joined today by Izzy Alkfoss. This is This Week in Rec. We're going to do the playoff preview edition, breaking down the bottom of the bracket. Now, many of you probably read or saw Jason Briggs's article this morning. A lot of this is going to be kind of wrapped around that article. So, 32 teams in Rec, 24 teams make the postseason, which means we have to eliminate 8. According to Jason Briggs's article, and I agree with him, there are 5 teams who are already out. The 1-6 Broncos, 0-7 last minute, 1-6 Pass the Rock, 1-6 Fridley Squids, and 1-6 or 0-7 Goldine, which means we have to eliminate 3 teams, which is not going to be easy. So we're actually going to take a closer look at 9 teams and their opponents this season. 6 of those teams are 3-4. 5 of those teams are 3-4. 3 of those teams are 2-5, and we have a 4-3 team that we're actually going to throw into the mix. We'll start with the 4-3 team. They are the Pigeons. 4-3, 4 wins against teams with probably maybe 5 combined wins. Let me check here. Goldine has 0 wins. Fridley Squids has 1 win with 4 combined wins. So the Pigeons at 4-3, to me and also to you, Izzy, are not a lock. They lost to the Players Club earlier this season. They're in a good spot right now because they are 4-3, but they're by no means a lock. What are your thoughts on the Pigeons 4-3 being on the bubble?
Yeah, to me, they're not a lock because I put a lot of stock in strength of schedule where a lot of people on the committee just go with pure record. I mean, the record kind of wins out. But I could point and I can say, well, any of the teams can beat, they don't have a win where it's like, yeah, it's a decent win. Any team can beat last minute or Goudas, Goldine, Squids, and Pass the Rock. I mean, those aren't necessarily wins. I think you need to have a win to actually, for me personally, to actually earn a spot in the playoffs, you need to beat somebody. So you're always going to be up for debate. Now, I mean, the 2 games that they had off constantly, they lost by 35 points maybe. And then Callahan, which I think they have 3 wins.
Callahan is 3-4, correct.
And they lost them by, almost 20 points. They lost to the Players Club, who have been weak throughout the course of, the last 3-4 seasons. They lost to them by 2. So I think they're squarely on the bubble. Now, they're on the plus side of it because other teams need to win. So I think if these other teams win, so I feel that if 6 of these teams win Wednesday and Thursday, the Pigeons will be out of the playoffs. That'll be my prediction at 4-3 because I still think 3-5 teams with decent wins is better than the Pigeons. Now, they got a 90% chance, 95% chance to get in, but there's still that maybe. Now, here's a question. Them up against the Pigeons, who gets in? I'm guessing I'd be the only committee member saying them over the Pigeons because them has 2 better wins than the Pigeons do.
Well, I think that's a great question. So this is the nightmare scenario for the Pigeons. If them wins, they go to 3-5. I'm not on the Players Committee this season, but I see a 3-5 them over a 4-4 Pigeons because of the vast schedule difference. If the Bloomington Squids win over the Crusaders, I don't put them over the Pigeons, even though they'd have 1 less win, so they're not over. The Red Devils win would put them at 4-4, likely over the Pigeons. Miller Times win would put them at 4-4. That's a toss-up. The Crusaders win would put them at 4-4. That's also a toss-up. The Barracudas win would put them at 3-5. Pigeons would still be above Barracudas because they have one more win, plus they've got the head-to-head. A Callahan win would put them at 4-4, and a UANO win would put them at 4-4. Even if all the teams win, I don't know if the Crusaders and Miller Time and the Red Devils all sneak above the Pigeons. Maybe. I guess that's why I have a committee. So them at 3-5, I'd have them over the 4-4 Pigeons as a very long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah, and that's fine. I don't care about record. I mean, it's part of a formula. But what I care about is wins, good wins, bad losses. They don't have a good win, and I think that's obvious. Any team, I mean, you look at the teams that are on the bubble, every single one of those teams, outside of the 2-5 teams, basically Squids, Cudas, everybody else would beat those 4 teams easily. Them at 2-5 would destroy those 4 teams by more than what the Pigeons did. And them likely wouldn't have gotten beaten by 30 to off constantly, likely wouldn't have gotten smoked by Callahan. Like, the Pigeons had an easy schedule. And this is why I don't like solid teams. I mean, the Pigeons have some good players. Why are they playing those 4 awful teams and then potentially having this issue? I think the schedules need to be a little bit more even, because the Pigeons, despite them being, maybe a bottom half team in Fridley, they shouldn't just get a cupcake schedule and not really have to work for it. I mean, Callahan wasn't even that good of a team this year. I mean, they're probably a bottom half team in Fridley. You look at the Players Club bottom half team. I mean, they have 6 games against bottom half teams, right? Am I missing? I mean, and who are they playing this week?
Agreed. They're playing Malice this week. I agree with you. And as a disclaimer, I did not make the schedule this quarter. So for all those who want to think I made the schedule, no, I agree with you. And here's the bottom line. I agree with the scheduling. The Pigeons did not earn a tough schedule. This goes back to the them discussions of many years ago. You got to earn that tough schedule. Them has earned that tough schedule, which to me is why them gets in at 3-5, or them would be ranked ahead of the Pigeons at 3-5 over 4-4. They've earned that tough schedule. The Pigeons haven't, and it's going to hurt you come postseason time. If the Pigeons go out and lose to Malice by 30, then they're either a 23 seed, a 24 seed, or they're out. If they go and they lose by 6 or 7, or if they somehow find a way to win the game, then yes, they're an easy, and they're a 21, 22 seed. So you got to earn that tough schedule. So, and I have no problem with committee members looking at the schedule and saying, you had an easy schedule, you didn't earn it, you don't deserve to be in. I'm totally fine with that. So, I don't want to spend too much time on the Pigeons. I want to move to one team at a time here. Let's start with the Barracudas. Unless you had anything final you wanted to add, good sir.
No, I mean, kind of to your point, I was going to piggyback on that. If they come out and they compete with Malice, they're in, right? If they come out and they lose by 25, if it's not a game, here's the big issue. The way I look at it in the playoffs is, if we're going to put a team in the playoffs, do we really want them to go in and get smoked by 30 points in the playing game? Right, that's the whole point of the playoffs, to take the 24 best teams, the teams that have earned it based on their season, and put them in. If they lose off Constable by 30 and then Malice by 30, I mean, they haven't earned anything. They haven't done anything to earn a playoff spot besides getting, gimmied an easy schedule. I need to see a game where I can say, okay, wow, like look at them. They beat the Squires. That is a impressive win. They were down 20. They rallied back. They beat the Squires. That is a game where I can say them can compete with almost every team in this league, and they've done it all season. I mean, they even competed with the Gorillas, where the Pigeons would probably lose by 40 to the Gorillas without any issue. And that's how I look at it. But, that'll kind of wrap things up. We'll leave it for the committee. I'll likely be the only one on my side of the fence on this. But I think it's a very important talking point. I would love to hear the opinions of people in the league, what they actually think of a 4-3 Pigeons team or a 4-4 Pigeons team versus a 2-5 or 2-6 them team potentially.
Well, 4-4 versus 2-6, that's another discussion. I've said all
4-3 and 4, 3-5.
Yeah, sure. I mean, but you could still make the case at 2-6 potentially. So I will say this: we did put it together that we were going to let 24 teams in. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have 24 good teams. 23 and 24 might be bad teams. So when you let 2/3 of the league in, or 3/4 of the league in the postseason, that may happen. So
yeah, but here's kind of to play devil's advocate. Them earned a tough schedule, but they didn't earn the toughest schedule in the league. But they got it. I mean, you give them instead of the Rebels, or instead of the Gorillas, or instead of the Goodfellas, you give them last minute. They're 3-5. They're a lock into the playoffs. They're going into the playoffs because they're going to beat last minute. They beat a Crusaders team who's on the bubble, and they beat the Squires. It's a better victory than anybody else has. So I think it's just like a one game. All they need is a one easy game. They had 8 games against potential playoff teams, and they won 2 of them. And the fact that they aren't going to make it because the Pigeons got handed the 4 worst teams in Ultimate Hoops doesn't make sense to me. But we'll discuss it on the Players Committee. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of video come Friday.
I think they'll make it. So, okay, Barracuda's 2-5. They have wins over Goldine, and over Pass the Rock. They have losses to the Players Club, the Pigeons, the Avengers, the Freeballers, and the Bulls North. It's going to take a borderline miracle for the Barracudas to make the postseason at 3-5. Any thoughts, Izzy, on the Cudas?
They're out. They just don't have anything. I mean, I can't. Once again, it's they're a worse version of the Pigeons with one less win, and the Pigeons beat them. And I have the Pigeons on my bubble and potentially out. I mean, like you said, Goldine, Squids, and Pass the Rock. The 3 worst teams in Fridley is who they beat. They're not in. I mean, I know Briggs has them on the bubble, but they're not. They're out. Unless Casey pays off the committee again and figures out a way to get them in, they're not going to make it.
Okay, let's talk about the Squids. They also have two wins. They're 2-5. They've beaten last minute, and they've also beaten the Broncos with losses against the Ridge Show, the Red Devils, the Squires, the Shockers, and Miller Time. Not your prototypical cake Squid schedule. Let me ask you this: if the Squids beat the Crusaders this week and they go to 3-5, any chance they sneak in?
Yeah, they'd be. I mean, I think they would be in. And I'll take a long, hard look. I think a lot of their luck is going to fall with how the rest of the teams finish. But a 3-5 Squids teams, a Squid team with their schedule, if they beat the Crusaders, I would have over the Pigeons in Fridley. Now, the thing that hurts them is the Broncos have been so bad this season that win, despite it looking decent, when you kind of go to the bare bones, it's not a good win. But I know that the Broncos, I still look at the Broncos and say, that team is much better than any team that the Pigeons beat in the regular season. And if they beat the Crusaders, that's 2 teams that they have wins over that are better than the Pigeons. So I would say that the Squids obviously have a must-win. They must win to have even a shot. And I think if they do beat the Crusaders, they knock the Crusaders out, and they potentially take the Pigeon spot. And all this is pending the committee. But, I mean, I think they got a good squad.
Let me ask you this. If the Squids in Bloomington go to 3-5, you'd vote them over the 4-4 Pigeons in Fridley if the Pigeons lose to Malice.
Correct.
Very interesting. Okay, good. All right, let's talk about them. Them has 2 wins, one over the Crusaders and one over the Squires. They have a 11-point loss to the Goodfellas, a 13-point loss to the Gorillas, a 1-point loss to the Muskies, a 22-point loss to the Rebels, and a 4-point loss to Big Smash. Here's my question for you, Izzy. We've talked a lot about the Pigeons so far. Let's keep it going. You said this a little bit earlier. I'm very curious because to me, I've already said that a 3-5 them is over a 4-4 Pigeons. Now, I'm not saying that means the Pigeons are out. The Pigeon them over a 4-4 Pigeons team in your eyes. Izzy, go.
Yeah, I vote him in. I vote him in.
Love it.
Now, here's the thing. I look at this kind of like a college schedule, and I know they play more games, but if I look at a mid-major that goes, 26-6, okay, and you look at a team from one of the power conferences, and they go 18-12, sometimes those 18-12 teams get in that large bid over a 26-6 team. Purely based off the strength of schedule, RPI, the whole bit. Now, we don't have the RPI, but we just have, here's your pure strength. Actually, we do kind of have an RPI. So we have their strength of schedule, and it's number one. It's the hardest schedule in all of rec. They beat 2 playoff teams, potentially, depending on how the Crusaders finish. And to me, once again, I look at it and say, if they had the Pigeon schedule, if they're playing in Fridley, they can snooze to a 4. It's not even a question that they'd get to 4 wins. It's not even a question. So it's not like a maybe. The Pigeons didn't have a game where I can say another team on the bubble, maybe you could have lost that team that they beat, and them would have put up a better showing than anything the Pigeons did all season. So I vote them in. I'm going to vote them in probably regardless because they have a win over a top 12 team in the Squires, and probably come playoff time, the Squires will probably be, a top 10 team, and that's better than anything else anybody's done below them. And they had the hardest schedule, and I might, if they're 2-6, I might slide them in the 24 spot and say, okay, you're in. I'm going to slide you into the last spot, but they're more than deserving to get in the playoffs.
Thursday night will be fun. So, okay, UANO, 3 wins, 4 losses. Now, let's do a little math here. Again, we needed to eliminate 3 teams out of these 9. Is that correct?
Yes.
You've eliminated for sure the Barracudas, which brings us down to needing to eliminate 2 teams. The Squids, you had not eliminated them. They're at 2-5 right now. So right now we're looking at eliminating 2 teams, and we have no clear 2 teams at who to eliminate. I think that's a very interesting point that we need to put in there, is that there's going to be 2 teams that, it's going to be interesting on Thursday night. So,
right.
3-4. Their 3 wins, not overly impressive. I had it here just a second ago. The Squids 2.0, they beat by 22. Pass the Rock, they crushed. And Goldine, they crushed. They have losses against the Celtics, the Freeballers, Off Constantly, and Malice. So they've had a relatively tough schedule. 3-4 UANO. What say you?
They win, they're in. They lose, they're out. Because they would essentially have the same wins as Pigeons, but they only have 3 wins. So if they beat the Players Club, they're in automatic. They're guaranteed in. If they lose, they're out. So here's the point. Now you say, well, how are they guaranteed? Here's what happens. If they beat the Players Club go to 4-4. UANO's at 4-4. UANO had a harder schedule, and they have the tiebreaker. So if UANO isn't in, the Players Club isn't in. So I know mathematically, based on how the records are, UANO's in at 4-4 if they beat the Players Club. If they lose, they're done.
I like it. Quick, easy, simple. Okay. The final team in Fridley on the bubble right now, Callahan Auto Parts, 3-4. They have wins over the Pigeons, the Players Club, and the Squids. Losses against the Blazers, Fob 5, Off Constantly, and the Celtics. Again, another tough schedule. Speaking of tough schedules, I think, Fridley's had a really surprisingly good season. And I think the strength is shifting slightly. And I know the top of the league resides in Bloomington, but the deeper part of the league, I think, is up in Fridley. But that's another discussion. Okay, Callahan Auto Parts, 3-4. They play the Bulls North. Not an easy matchup. What happens if they win? What happens if they lose?
If they lose, it's going to be a very long discussion about Callahan because they beat the Pigeons, and they had a much tougher schedule. So I could see that conversation lasting a long time, and I think a lot of this is going to hinge on the other committee members. And I'm going to just give it to you from my perspective of how the committee is going to look at it. If them loses 2-6, okay, and Callahan loses, drops to 3-5, and the Pigeons lose and they go to 4-4, I think the committee will actually vote them out because of the discrepancy in record. Callahan beat the Pigeons. I think they get in, and the Pigeons are also in. So if all three teams lose, I think Callahan's in. Now, if them wins, Callahan loses, Pigeons lose, we're going to have a really long discussion between Callahan and the Pigeons. Now, my vote, I'd have Callahan over the Pigeons, and they're not going to beat the Bulls. They're just not going to beat them. So they're going to be 3-5. So it's going to hinge on a lot of stuff. I think out of all the bubble teams, they are absolutely on the bubble if they lose. Like, that is pure bubble. If they win, they're 100% in.
Let me ask you this. So with every single team that we've discussed, the Pigeons have come up. Okay, so Pigeons play Malice on Thursday. At what margin of victory or loss does it have to be where you say to yourself, okay, that's all I needed to see, the Pigeons are in? Obviously, if they win, but what if they lose by 2, by 6, by 12, by 14? What's that margin of victory for you that'll sway you on the other side? Because a lot of teams are going to look at the Pigeons and say, hey, we can take that spot. UNO, Callahan, the Squids in Bloomington, I mean, we're talking about potentially taking their spot. So there's going to be a lot of eyes on that game. What's the point differential?
Great question. Single digits, if they lose by single digits, they're in the playoffs. Because I need to see a good performance against a good team. I need one. You play 8 games. I need one good performance against a good team. I just need one. And if you get shellacked by a 3-4 Callahan team that's vying for another spot, I don't know how I can give a 3-5 Callahan an early exit out of the postseason over the Pigeons that they beat by 17 points, despite the Pigeons getting an easier schedule. That's all it is. The only reason Callahan would be out is because Aaron Wimsett decided, I'm going to give the Pigeons 4 wins. That's basically what happened. He said, look at this, I'm going to give the Pigeons 4 wins. He basically, and I'm going to make my point right here, and we'll end the Pigeons discussion for this. When Aaron Wimsett made the schedule, he essentially took the Pigeons and put them in the playoffs. They're the only team that was pretty much guaranteed playoffs per their schedule because he gave them 4 wins. He automatically gave them 4 wins before the start of the season with the Cudas, Squids, Goldine, Pass the Rock. I mean, they're the only team in the league that got 4 free wins.
That you're not giving the Barracudas enough credit. I'll be completely.
Well, the Cudas lost Jake and Zip. I mean, those are 2 huge pieces for me. They're not the Cudas of last season. I love the Cudas. I like their friend. I love the jersey. I love the whole thing. But the Cudas haven't done anything this season to justify actually being a decent team. I mean, am I off my rocker here? I mean, what have they really done?
No, I don't think you're off your rocker. But I think up until last week when they lost to the Pigeons, they were in the postseason discussion. You know.
Yeah, but they lost to the Pigeons by double digits. They lost to the Players Club. They got smoked by the Bulls. They got smoked by the Free Ballers. They lost to the Avengers by double digits. I mean, what have they done? I mean, nothing. That's a bad team. It's a bad team. The Cudas are a bad team, and they're going to go play the Squids this week. They're going to likely beat them, and they're still a bad team. Once again, 8 games. They showed me nothing in 8 games.
Okay.
They're a bad team.
Okay, let's move south to the Crusaders. Now, the Crusaders play the Squids. Very interesting game. Crusaders with 3 wins. Let's break down their schedule a bit. They beat the Broncos by 17. You said that a little bit ago that's a better win than people are going to give them credit for. They beat Last Minute by 10. Last Minute has 0 wins this season. And they beat the Red Devils by 8, which is a pretty good win.
No.
They have losses? No, you said?
No, I mean, I'll get to that, but continue. Okay, you're going to say it's a good win. We'll continue.
Well, I mean,
Well,
it's here. Okay, hold on one second.
you
Here.
forgot.
They have losses versus them, the Muskies, the Shockers, and the Goodfellas. Okay, sir.
Right. So, but that's not why it's not a good win. It's not a good win because the Red Devils had 4 guys, and the Red Devils and they didn't have their 4 best players. They had 2 guys that normally don't start, or I guess 1 guy that normally doesn't start in their lineup because Scott actually starts the majority of the games, but they typically have 2. So they played 4 on 5, missing 2 starters, having 2 bench guys out of their 4, and they took the Crusaders into overtime. So it's not a good win whatsoever. It's a bad win. It's a horrible win.
Well, yeah, you're right, and I'm about to make a point that we could argue this forever, but I'm not going to punish the Crusaders for the Red Devils showing up as 4 players. To me, it's a win. Yeah, it's a little bit different because they did go to overtime with them. You should never go to overtime with the 4-on-5 team, or whatever. But
does one player make a 1-point difference? If they have a 5th guy, does it make a 1-point difference?
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay. Now, you don't punish a team 4-on-5. If the Crusaders went out and beat the Red Devils by 25, 30 points like they should have with 4-on-5, you don't punish them. If they go out and they win in overtime, you punish them.
Sure, true. No, yeah. It's a good point. Okay, so if the Crusaders lose, they'll be 3-5. If they win, they'll be 4-4. Do you have them in at 4-4?
They're in at 4-4.
Okay,
they'll be in at 4-4 because they'll just have they'll have a better resume than the Pigeons, and probably and likely the Players Club as well. So they'll be in at 4-4, despite the bad Red Devils win. But the Squids they've been solid this year. The Broncos, not good, but at least it's not, a bottom 2 team.
Okay, and the Squids, if they win, you have the Squids at 3-5 and likely in, you're saying?
Yeah, Squids will be in at 3-5.
Okay, so let's go down. We've got 2 more teams to discuss in Bloomington, and then we'll kind of wrap a bow on it. Miller Time, 3-4. They play last minute this week, which is a likely win. Miller Time's wins include the Squids, the Broncos, and the Muskies by 24, mind you. So let me ask you this: they're in, obviously, but what about a loss? What if Miller Time loses this week?
They're in. Once again, now if they last minute, if they lose the last minute, they lose to them by 10, 15, 20 points, sure, then it's a discussion. If they go to last minute and last minute squeaks out a win somehow, Miller Time might be missing players, whatever the case may be, they're still in. That Muskies win has them in. Now, what could hurt them is if the Muskies lose again this week. And now the Muskies are 5-3, and that win isn't really as good as it should be. Now, I know the Muskies were missing a couple guys, but that's not Miller Time's fault. They played that game, even if the Muskies would have had a full lineup, that game would have come down to the wire. I think they're in. I don't think they're going to have a problem with last minute. I think it's a moot point. Miller Time's in.
Let me ask you this question, and I know the answer, but it's a show, so we gotta entertain the crowd. Miller Time made the postseason last quarter, and they respectfully forfeited their first game. And again, I know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyways. Does the Players Committee hold that against Miller Time this quarter?
Actually, I don't know how you know this answer because I don't really know the answer.
Well, it should be no. The answer should be no.
But no. But it's not a firm no because I think it's very important to have the integrity of the playoffs intact. So if Miller Time didn't show up last season, regardless of the reason, they were a Wednesday night team not being able to make a Thursday night game, right? Or was it a Tuesday game? I can't remember.
It would have been a Thursday game last quarter.
Thursday game. We're going to have the same exact scenario this time, right?
I think we're doing Tuesday.
Well, didn't we did Tuesday? We did playing games Tuesday, then we went Wednesday, Thursday. So last season was also the same format: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah,
So we're gonna have to. So if they couldn't make a Tuesday game last season, how do I know that they're gonna make a Tuesday game this season? We vote them in, right, and then they forfeit. Then what? And I think if somebody tells me if Miller Time decides to forfeit, we add another team in their place, move everybody up a slot, and take that team and move them into 24th place, then I don't think it hurts them. But if you tell me that they're absolutely going to not be a replacement team if Miller Time can't make it, then it changes the discussion. But I still think at 4-4 they have to be in. At 3-5, it's a talking point, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I expect them to win, and I expect them to show up. So again, just a talker. Okay, last team, Red Devils. Eric Brocious, the Bro, my favorite nickname in all of Ultimate Hoops. 3-4 Red Devils. They beat the Goodfellas. Now this is not your older brother's Goodfellas, but it's still a quality win. They beat last minute. They beat the Squids. They lose to Big Smash Crusaders. Again, 4-5. The Gorillas only by 3, and 22-point loss to the Ridge Show. They play the Shockers. The Shockers are rolling right now. MVP Jake Gave leading the way. What do you have for both a Red Devils win or a Red Devils loss?
Out of all the teams that are on the bubble, this team is an automatic in. They should be in the Bloomington South lock. They should be locked over the Players Club and the Pigeons in Fridley. It's an easy one. They're in. And I don't think there will not be a discussion of whether the Red Devils are in come Thursday night. It'll be a discussion of where they're going to be seated come Thursday night. And a lot of that will be indicative of how they perform against the Shockers, but they don't need to sweat out the bubble. They're in.
Okay, so we discussed 9 teams. Again, 3 of those 9 are going to be out. I guess we'll see.
So my prediction is we'll see, and if I mean, based on how I think the game's going to end up, I think that the Pigeons, Crusaders, or Squids, whoever loses that game, and the Barracudas are out. Everybody else is in. So the Pigeons need UNO to lose, and UNO. So basically, the Pigeons, I think, will make the playoffs if UNO loses. If UNO wins, the Pigeons are going to be out. Based on how I predict the games to go.
Yeah.
In my opinion, if I was jotting them down.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting because the Crusaders have 3 wins and a loss puts them at 5 losses. And then I put the Squids at 3-5. So you're saying the Crusaders would be out, but the Squids would be in at 3-5. I think that's an interesting one as well. Having the Squids skip over a 4-4 Fridley team. It's going to be interesting. It'll be interesting Thursday night. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you change the Squids name, you change the Squids to them at 3-5, and they're in with that resume over the Pigeons. So I think a lot of it matters. What I am interested to hear from the players in this league is that whole forfeiting scenario pre-tip-off. Now, we've had this happen before. Do we replace the team as long as we have a 24-hour window to do it? Or a 12-hour window. If that next team in line can make it, do we hold court and let them play and take place, or do we do the forfeit? Jason Briggs would say they didn't earn a spot, they shouldn't be in. I say we shouldn't give a team a free win, let the next team in line come play because it was likely a toss-up anyways. I think it's a different scenario this time around. So I'm interested to see what people think, if they think we should have a team step in case of a forfeit or not.
Well, what if it's a 17 seed? Then do you move that 25 seed up to 17, or do you move everybody up and have to
move everybody up a slot?
But then you've got to redo the schedules, and you've got guys playing at 6:30 that need to play at 9:30. It's a mess.
Like I said, it gives us a 24-hour window. If we have a 24-hour window, we're able to do it. Then we can make it happen.
Okay. Very, very, very interesting talker. I would side with Briggs on that one, unless it's the 24 seed. If the 24 seed is out and you can sneak that 25 seed into the 24 and you don't have to change any games, then I would be okay with that. But switching every single game around, that's a tough one because you get a lot of requests.
I hear you.
Times.
Yeah, I mean that's a valid point. It's a valid point.
All right, UH Nation, we will see you on Wednesday night, and then again on Thursday night. The players' seating meeting, or the players' committee seating meeting, will take place Thursday night. We'll of course have full coverage from that seating meeting available to you early Friday morning. For Izzy Alkfoss, my name is Reed Nelson. Have a wonderful evening. See you tomorrow.